Alright, yo guys, what's up? It's your boy, the Geeky Gangsy here, coming guys today with another video. In today's video, we have the 2024 movie recap slash review. Just going over how I felt about the 2024 movies, my favorites, my least favorites, etc., etc. I know this video was supposed to be out, guys, on December 31st. January 1st is now at least January 10th by the time you guys are seeing this. Big gap in between when this video is supposed to be released, this type of video is typically released, and versus when it's actually released. Please forgive me and continue, just bear with me on that one. But I wanted to release it anyway. I wanted to go over the movies with you guys anyway. I forgot, but I still wanted to. And so now on January 10th or whatever, we're going through the 2024 movies. So guys, I thought that 2024 was an extremely bad year for movies, and more particularly an extraordinarily forgettable year for movies. I remember the movies I saw in 2023 more than I remember the movies that I saw in 2024, as far as how the list of movies that I distinctively remember seeing in 2023 versus 2024. And also just if I was to go down a list of every movie I did see, I remember the ones in 2023 more per movie. I have a stronger remembrance of those ones than in the ones in 2024, which is really weird considering that it's 2024 was obviously closer to me than 2023 was in 2025. But I remember the ones I saw in 2023 more just because they had so much more remembrance to them. They had so much higher quality to them. It's not just me saying this. So the 2023 averages, I saw 150 movies in 2023, and that's going to be big here in a second. My average movie rating in 2023 was a 59.72 out of 100. Again, 59.72 out of 100. IMDb's average rating for those same movies that I watched in 2023 was a 59.99, and Rotten Tomatoes was a 60.88 out of 100 for all the movies I saw in 2023, making that an average for 2023 movies 60.19. Now we bring it into 2024. I only ended up watching 100 movies. I watched 50 less movies in 2024 because I felt like a solid amount of movies were not worth watching. You had movies like the new Joker movie that came out in 2024 that everybody just told me was bad, and so I sort of regressed from seeing that. And there was a solid handful of movies that ended up in that boat to where everybody just said it was bad, and so I kind of trusted everybody on those, and I didn't end up seeing them. I still want to see the new Joker movie, so I wasn't a great example, but I'm saying there was a lot of movies in that boat. But anyways, 50 less movies. My average rating dropped from a 59 in 2023 to a 57.64 in 2024. IMDb's rating drops from a 59.99 to a 58.75. Rotten Tomatoes rating drops from a 60.88 to a 58.16 in 2024. So IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes all dropped in quality in our ratings year over year. And that brings us from an average, by the way. 2023's average for 150 movies was 60.19. 2024, for only 100 movies, 50 less movies, the average drops by by over 2% actually, to 58.18. So 2.01%. It drops in quality. And that, you say 2%, it doesn't seem like a huge deal, but I think about it 2% on a 100% average for a movie average on an entire year, that is incredibly bad. A 2% deficient in movie qualities, drop in movie quality over a year is actually extremely bad, and especially with 50 less movies to compare to. So I should have watched less bad movies. So if you watch less movies, your movie quality should actually be increasing, because it means you're streaming less movies in that year. Basically, you should be seeing less cheap movies. You're going to be seeing a higher percentage of theatrical movies compared to your overall movie watching ratio if you've seen less movies. So that average should actually have gone up about 4 to 5%. With 33% less movies, the quality should have gone up by 4 or 5%. But everybody agrees between me, IMDb, and Rotten Tomatoes that the percentage actually went down by 2%. Which is, so yeah, it's been a very bad, forgettable year for movies. Anyways, let's get into the worst movies of 2024. I want to talk about the most disappointing, disrespectful, trash, just absolutely unbelievably horrible, I mean, just completely ridiculous films of 2024. The movies I left feeling robbed by seeing, really. And I just didn't appreciate these actually 9 movies. I didn't feel like it was fair to put a 10th. Disclaimer, I did not finish Wicked because I hated it so much. And if I don't finish a movie, I don't count it in the movies I've watched. I only count movies I watched as the movies I finished. So Wicked would be on there. But the 9th worst movie of the year was Sonic 3. Now, Sonic 3 was not in itself a bad movie. It's just the fact that it loses the entire Sonic identity and attempts to become a generic sci-fi superhero movie, basically. And it tries to appease these very, very generic millennial audiences while completely disabandoning the Sonic identity, that video game identity. The reasonings that we loved Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, all of the pop culture references, the comedy in those movies, the lightheartedness of Sonic 1 and 2, it completely disbands the entire company identity, franchise identity of the first 2 Sonic films, and Sonic as a whole and as a character. Just completely abandons it. Just lets it go. Lets it go, man. It just let it go, dude. It just let Sonic go, man. In an attempt to become a generic superhero movie to increase its target audience, it wanted to become a generic movie instead of Sonic. And I felt like it was very disappointing that they made that decision to do so. Coming in at number 8, we have Am I Racist by Matt Walsh. Am I Racist was not funny at all. It felt like kind of fake. I feel like a lot of it was faked and staged. It just felt overly cringe to me. I was kind of cringing the entire movie, and I respect the fact that a Daily Wire movie made it into the movie theaters. I respect the fact that a conservative, independent film was in the movie theaters. I just don't think that this movie in particular should have been the one to make it there, I think it was very cringe, unfunny, fake, and I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to enjoy it. And I was excited to see this movie. I did a vlog about this movie, actually. I did a review in this movie in a vlog. But yeah, guys, it's just unfunny and fake. Am I Racist by Matt Walsh, coming in at number 8. Coming in at number 7, we have another movie I was kind of excited to see, Bonhoeffer. Bonhoeffer was very boring and repetitive compared to what they said it was going to be. They said it was, sort of like an action-packed World War II film, and they sort of advertised it as an exciting film. And when I was sitting in the theaters watching this, it was nothing but a very significantly boring historical film that doesn't really matter at all. I felt like this movie just did not have the cultural, historical impact that they advertised it as having. I feel like it was a very shallow film. I felt like it was a very simplistic film. Basically, all this movie does is say that the Catholic Church was evil for waiting too long to join into World War II. And all it does is say that over and over and over and over and over again. And it gives props basically to like this preacher dude who stood up to the Nazis and like was preaching the gospel in Germany and stood up to Hitler. But all it is constant speaking. It sort of reminds me of the reason I didn't like Oppenheimer when a lot of people liked Oppenheimer. I felt like it wasn't necessarily even a movie. It was just, I don't know. It was just historical talking points. They just wanted to point out the fact that the Catholic Church was evil during World War II, and they just want like it's just this guy talking a bunch basically. It's just a 2 hour long yap session and a yap and a nap session. It was absolute snooze fest. It was a historical snooze fest. A lot of historical movies are boring, but this one just it did not have the pizzazz that it needed to have and that it was advertised to have. So I felt like it was overwhelmingly disappointing. Coming in at number 6, we have Deadpool and Wolverine as the 6th worst movie of the year. Deadpool and Wolverine, it's sort of like Sonic 3. I just felt like it's significantly worse than Sonic 3, actually. I felt like it was a disgrace to superhero movies. The comedy in Deadpool and Wolverine was so outdone. They tell the same like 2 or 3 jokes 150 times throughout. It's so overplayed, the comedy in this movie. And you can't say that enough. It's just, and then like the plot of the movie was not good. The writing was horrible. The acting was so mid. And people say that like Deadpool has good acting. I don't know. I don't really see it. I hated the comedy in it though. The comedy really ruined it for me. The plot really ruined it for me. And I just felt like it was just a disgrace to superhero movies in general. I just think most other superhero movies had significantly better plots to it. It was more, less superhero-y, it just was, oh man, just a bad movie. Coming in at number 5, we have Arena Wars. Arena Wars is a movie that you probably haven't heard of. It was on Prime? Paramount. It was either on Prime Video or Paramount Plus. It basically features these prisoners on death row who are given the option to go into arenas and fight top-notch killers to the death in an attempt to escape, because if they kill all of the killers, then they basically get their freedom back when they're on death row. So they're going to die anyway in prison. So the idea is they can go fight for their lives in a Hunger Games style. However, I say Hunger Games style. That's a huge disgrace to Hunger Games for me to be calling this a Hunger Games style movie. Arena Wars was so overwhelmingly stupid. They don't explain anything. They don't really explain why the killers are in the arena. They don't tell us if the killers were originally death row inmates. They don't explain like why death row inmates would get free and then go back to try to kill the other death row inmates. They sort of explain who the killers are. I guess they're drugged up to like feel that way or to like be controlled, but they don't showcase like that, and the whole movie does not make any sense at all. And I also despise movies that are only basically one scene. Movies where only one singular thing happens in the entire film, and it doesn't go like boom, 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 like an actual story would. Because I feel like a story is supposed to make multiple like dots in between, and Arena Wars is boom, like one dot, and it's all like one scene for the most part. And the special effects in this movie were some of the worst special effects I've ever seen in my life. It's like worse than 1980s, like The Exorcism special effects would have been, because they just tried so hard to outdo their budget, and it becomes so abundantly obvious that they did not have the means necessary to pull off of these special effects. And The special effects absolutely shoot this movie in the foot as well. But it's just really not that much of an entertaining movie for the sort of like arena like slasher it should have been, for the Hunger Games type movie it should have been. And the fact that they had movies like the Hunger Games to take the write down the notes from, write down the notes of how to make a good movie like this. And I really don't feel like they did any of that research work, because this movie was just plain awful. The plot is, the plot, the writing, the acting is all awful. The special effects are the worst, probably the worst special effects I've ever seen in my life. And I'm talking well over, like 600-700 movies in my life. I ramped up my movie watching in recent years. But throughout my life, probably around that 750 digit. The worst special effects in 750 movies spanning across 4 decades. And I'm not exaggerating at all. It's that bad. Coming in at number 4, we have Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. Now, most of you guys watching this, you guys saw the first Blood and Honey, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. You guys saw that first one in 2023 out of curiosity. You guys were like, oh my gosh, they're making Winnie the Pooh into a horror movie. This is so cool. They're making Winnie the Pooh into a horror movie. I have to check this out. And then you guys saw the first one, and you were like, this is mid. It's like the first one's like a 30 to 40, maybe high 40s overall out of 100. It's pretty, just slightly under mid, but it was, a fun movie. And then you go, most of you guys are not, were smart enough not to go back and watch Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2, because you sort of realized that it was a scam to get your money. However, I did sit down in my room and watch this movie for 2 hours, or like an hour 40 minutes, or whatever the runtime is. But Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2 was so significantly, well, I felt like it was significantly worse than Winnie the Pooh, the first Winnie the Pooh. It's kind of like the same. It's really not the same aspect. They try to put this plot in with the 700 Acre Woods thing. So instead of it just being in the woods and just being like a slasher movie, they tried to put a super duper serious plot in the middle. So it goes like this ridiculous movie, super serious plot, ridiculous movie, super serious plot. And that changing back and forth did not work out for this movie at all. I felt like the effects sort of got worse in this movie. I didn't really like, I don't know, there's a few scenes in this movie that were ridiculously bad scenes. I felt like the Tigger nightclub scene was remarkably bad. And third worst move, this is where we're getting into our super duper bad movie. I feel like there's a solid jump between 4 and 3. The third worst movie of the year was Afraid. Afraid does absolutely nothing. It was advertised as as it having potential to be a good movie. I was excited to see this movie after the advertising, and during watching this movie, I realized that they're just not going to do anything exciting at all in this movie. It's so overwhelmingly generic. I felt like it felt super cheap. It felt like a dollar store movies. It felt like a Dollar General product. You just walk into Dollar General, and it's if Dollar General was a movie, it'd be Afraid. And yes, you guys know what I mean? You just sort of walk into the local Dollar General, and it's why do we have 50 of these in my town? Why do we need 50 of Dollar Generals in my town? Why can't we get something better, That's how I really felt about Afraid. And it doesn't really do anything. And then the plot that they attempted to have becomes super super cringe and super strange throughout. And Possessed by Horror also had this in her top 10 worst movies, so I would recommend you guys check that video out if you like movie critics in general. Coming in at number 2, we have In a Violent Nature. In a Violent Nature also, like, quite literally does nothing. This movie is just a walking simulator. You are just walking in the woods with a guy with a mask and like an axe for 2 hours of your life. It's just a close up of you walking in the woods. That's all you're doing. You're just walking in the woods. It has like 4 or 5 kills in it. The kills are not exciting, and it's not worth watching a man walk in the woods for that long. And by the time you get to the kills, it's just, it's like, watcha! And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, man. You're like, yeah, that guy was just killed. I don't really care, man. I took, I was with my friend Will to go see this movie. My friend Will said that it was the worst movie he's ever seen in his life, but he's seen a lot less movies than I have. I've definitely seen worse movies, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I've seen worse movies than just watching a man walk through the woods for 2 hours. That's better than some films. And the number 1 worst movie of the year was Demon Slayer to the Hashira Training. So, Demon Slayer, I feel like it's a complete disgrace to anime, and that's a controversial opinion. A lot of people say Demon Slayer is the best anime. This movie in particular had good critic reviews. A lot of people like this movie. However, I felt like the plot does not keep up with itself throughout. It changes way too inconsistently. It's so difficult to keep up with. There's nothing actual important, like of actual importance or value during this movie. You will not take anything out of the movie theater with you. Like, this is one of those movies where we would, if I saw it with you, we could walk out the movie theater, and on our way to our car, I'd be like, hey, I dare you to name one scene in that movie. And you probably couldn't. Generally looking back on it, it's kind of a blur. I just know it was super bad, and the scenes changed constantly. I took my girlfriend to see this. I asked her if she was enjoying this movie in the middle of it, kind of jokingly, because I knew how horrible it was, like, during the middle of it. And she goes, like, no, and we both just started, like, cracking up laughing of, like, how absolutely horrible this movie was. In the middle of the movie theater, we both just start laughing at how bad this movie was. Both me and my girlfriend really, like, it was a very mutual consensus, and I believe my computer just died, and I lost my list, very unfortunately. Yeah, guys, Demon Slayer, disgrace to anime, but the movie, the Demon Slayer that came out in the year prior, or 2022 or 2023, the last Demon Slayer that came out before this one was a lot better. This one just completely falls off a cliff from the last one even, and just the inconsistency really upset me. Moving into the top 10 best movies of 2024, coming in at number 10, we have Cabrini. So Cabrini is a movie about Saint Frances Cabrini, Mother Cabrini of New York. And basically her story is she came to New York from Italy as the first woman to ever lead a mission in the Catholic Church. So she's basically seen as like a pioneer and an icon of women's rights and women's progression in American history. And this movie really does a great job at both depicting her life and her successes, along with the conditions of New York at that time, as, immigrant children were like living in the sewers, and a lot of children in New York just had horrible, horrific, like straight horror movie living conditions back when she arrived. I'm not sure exactly what year it was, like the 1800s. Let me Google that. So yeah, she arrived in New York in 1889. So back then, the conditions of New York were horrendous for children. There were tons of, homeless children. The children had nothing to eat. Lots of immigrant children living in the sewers because, like, they weren't really allowed on the streets of New York. And if they weren't living in the sewers, they were living in extraordinarily dangerous ghettos with horrible infrastructure, very disgusting conditions. And Mother Cabrini came along and she fought for immigrant rights, children's rights, and women's rights, and she built a ton of orphanages across the United States and across the globe. And basically, in her name, hundreds of orphanages and hospitals and schools were built in the U.S. and around the globe also. And in her life, she was directly responsible for seeing after hundreds of children. And she helped so many children escape those horrible conditions. And the fight that she fought for human dignity was remarkable. And this movie just does such a good job at depicting everything. So that's why it comes into my top 10. Number 9, we have Fall Guy. Fall Guy is a movie about basically, it's a movie about a movie's stunt double. So this stunt double, was previously in love with the director of the movie. And then, he becomes this actor's stunt double after, falling out. So there's basically a little bit of romance involved, but it's mainly a comedic action movie, sort of. And then some bad things happen, and he finds out some bad things, and so he goes on an adventure. And yeah. It's kind of difficult to explain. Coming in at number 8, we have Beekeeper. Beekeeper is an action movie about this guy who works for a United States agency, and he tries to get money back for people who were robbed, basically, and he takes down these massive corporations that are robbing money from people. And so it's an action movie. It ends up in the in the White House, and yeah, it's just a guns a-blazing shooter movie, but they did a super duper good job with it. It felt huge. It felt like a huge, production. It felt just like a big movie. It felt important. And leaving the theaters, I just really had a great experience watching Beekeeper. Coming into number 7 on our best movies of the year, we have Blink Twice. So Blink Twice is a movie where basically this woman meets a billionaire, and the billionaire convinces her to come to her private island, and eventually they find out that they're just drugging a whole bunch of women on the private island and raping them basically every single night, and then drugging them so that they don't remember anything, and they never want to leave the private island because the private island is like their dream life. They don't have to work or do anything. And none of the women that have ever tried to escape, but a lot of women end up waking up and trying to escape, and that's when things take a darker turn. So they have to figure out how to escape the island after being, brought there and drugged by these billionaires, and there's no way of escape. Bum, bum, bum. So yeah, Blink Twice was really well done, I felt like, and it was a great movie in 2024. To number 6, we have Mufasa. So Mufasa, I felt like it was a great prequel to The Lion King. A lot of people were pissed off at it. Oh my gosh, they keep on making sequels and prequels and remakes, man. It's not a remake. It's an entirely different film in the franchise. And the thing is, people say that they're pissed off at people making remakes, but yet they keep on seeing superhero movies, which is the same thing over and over again. It's slightly different atmosphere, slightly different, mask or outfits or whatever, but the same concept. The good guys win, bad guys lose. That's every single superhero movie. So people say that they're tired of remakes, that they go see superhero movies all the time. That kind of pisses me off. But anyways, Mufasa was a great prequel to The Lion King. I really enjoyed how it was brought, how his story was brought up. I enjoyed the storytelling in this movie. I just felt like everything was super well done. I couldn't have asked for a better Lion King movie. And honestly, it was a lot better than I was expecting. I was expecting it for it to be extremely mid and probably boring, but it was actually beautiful. It was a beautiful tale. How he meets his wife, um, and how it sort of continues in to like future Lion King movies, and I felt like it was just a great film in this franchise. I'm actually very glad that they released it. Going into number 5, we have Werewolves. So Werewolves is basically like one night per year on the certain type of moon or whatever, people turn into werewolves because they have a certain like parasite basically, and they turn into these uncontrollable beasts. And so it's a werewolf survival movie. They're trying to survive werewolves, and it goes along with different characters in different settings. There's people trying to survive the werewolves in their houses within city limits. People like fighting the werewolves, fighting back, and it has to do a lot with like this laboratory that created this drug, or not, basically created a pharmaceutical to cure the werewolves so they wouldn't turn into werewolves at all. However, you'll have to watch the movie to see how that turns out. So basically, it's just a werewolf survival movie. However, I felt like it was, again, this is a movie that I had low expectations going into. I really just saw it because I was in the area at the time and I wanted to go see a movie. And that was the only one I could have seen that I haven't seen yet, basically. It was that sort of situation, but it turned out to be super exciting. I felt like the production value was pretty high on it. I felt like the directing, the acting, the writing all came together as best as it possibly could have for this movie. And I was very pleasantly surprised at how good this movie actually was. So yeah, guys, so Werewolves is coming in at number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have a controversial one, I think. Let me look at the ratings. I think I'm very much in the wrong for putting this at my number 4, or it's kind of standing out there. Wait, no, yeah, that was. So my number 4 is The Crow. The Crow is basically a remake of a 1994 movie. 30 years later, they remade this movie, and a lot of people were pissed off. They were saying that this movie was significantly worse than the first one. It had a 50-point drop from the first one, according to Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score was horrible, so I get that I'm out there when it comes to this movie. But I really enjoyed the 2024 Crow. I felt that it was so unique. I felt that it was beautiful. I felt that it was well done. I felt that the production value, the graphics were all just great. I just really enjoyed how much of a unique viewing experience that this provided. And I really think that this was probably one of the most memorable movies of 2024. This is one of the movies I'm going to actually remember more fondly going into the future. When I look back at, hey, like, what movies did I watch in 2024? I was like, oh yeah, I watched The Crow in 2024. I think it was just unique and memorable. And it had fantastic acting in it. I felt like the main character really carried this movie as well. And yeah, guys, so The Crow is in my number 4. Going into number 3, we have If. Don't mind the bottles. I actually have a If poster on my wall. So If is basically this dude's imaginary friends come to life, and they go on a magical adventure. And guys, this movie sounds like a cringe cartoon, right? This movie sounds like it gives the vibes that it would have came from a smaller studio movie. It would have been bad. You weren't going to like this as much as those big name cartoons that came out in 2024, like Sonic, Garfield, Inside Out 3. Those bigger names, you probably didn't think you were going to enjoy this one as much as those bigger name cartoons. But this one I felt like was so much more imaginative than the big name cartoons. I felt like it was so much more unique than the bigger name cartoons. And dude, I just felt like the animation of it all was fantastic. I felt, dude, I felt completely transferred into their world, and that's one of the marks of an incredible movie, when you are completely captured and you are brought into their world. And you're no longer like just a person watching a movie, you're completely transferred into the movie's world. That is a mark of an incredible movie. And I feel like it's one of the few marks that sets those 90 plus club elite movies from like the 70s and 80s. Is if I as a human was completely immersed into the world that they brought me into, that's a mark of a movie that I love. And that is absolutely If. Whew. Coming in at number 2, we have Nosferatu. Coming in at number 2, we have Nosferatu. Baby, or Nosferatu, I don't know. But the vampire movie from 100 years ago that was remade. It appeared in SpongeBob Burst. It was also made in like the 1970s, 1980s. They made a remake of it. So basically, every 50 years, this movie gets remade. And if a movie is getting remade 100 years later, that really speaks on the original movie, man. And this movie, it's just such a classic. It's such an Americana classic film. Definitely, one of the most memorable movies of 2024. Obviously, like, you really can't put that into words enough. 100 years worth of remaking this film. If a movie has survived for 100 damn years, that really speaks on how good that movie was to begin with. And this remake absolutely does it justice. Once again, it completely transforms you into their world. You are no longer just watching a movie. You're completely immersed. You're completely captured by this film. And this remake does the original so much good justice. And so that's why Nosferatu, first of all, is a vampire movie loosely based off of Dracula. There's people are trying to survive, find out how to survive Nosferatu, basically. Coming in at number 1, we have Poor Things. Poor Things was a very indescribable movie, but very memorable movie. Definitely very unique and creative. You will never watch another movie like it in your entire life. This movie was weird. This movie was wild. This movie was everything in between. Basically, it follows like a prostitute, basically, that's living in like one of those hotels for prostitutes. Like you guys know where like you buy a room with a prostitute, a brothel, I think it's called. Yeah, brothel. She's a hooker's living in a brothel, and it's sort of like goes along with like this billionaire scientist who's like, and they have like this like weird relationship sort of, but a lot of other weird stuff happens in between there, and it's just a wild experience. By the way, it's at 93 on Rotten Tomatoes. It is in Rotten Tomatoes 90 plus club as well. It's also at a 78 for IMDb. It was like the second highest, or I think this is actually the highest 2024 IMDb film that came out in IMDb. That came out in 2024. I think this is their highest rating for actual 2024 films I watched this year. I could be wrong. So, Poor Things, brought back to life by an unorthodox scientist, a young woman runs off with a lawyer on a whirlwind adventure across the continents. Free from the prejudices of her times, she grows steadfast in her purpose to stand for equality and liberation. Wow. That's a very unique description there. Brought back to life by an unorthodox scientist, a young woman runs off with a lawyer on a whirlwind adventure across the continents. Free from the prejudices of her times, she grows steadfast in her purpose to stand for equality and liberation. Beautiful, beautiful statement right there. But yeah, guys, it has extraordinarily high ratings by me, Rotten Tomatoes, and IMDb. I'm trying to look at Rotten Tomatoes. What is their audience score? Come on, show it to me. Oh, their audience score is actually only a 79 of 100. So perhaps the audience felt differently from the critics, but IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes both had this in their top 10 favorites. For me, this was the best movie of 2024. I felt like it was a very transformative, very memorable, remarkable. I felt like it was once again, it was an American cinema classic masterpiece. I felt like the acting was so beautiful. I felt like the production value was high in this movie, and it's just my number one movie of the year. But yeah, guys, overall, 2024 was worse than 2023, and I think it's going to be worse than 2025 also. We have so much movies to look forward to in 2025. We really, really do, and I think we will probably see like a 5% increase in 2025 compared to 2024. I just think there's so much better movies coming out this year. But I wanted to get this video out and just, yap about the movies of 2024. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Holy shit, 45 minutes.